The conference room sat high above Manhattan, but no one cared about the skyline that morning. Every executive at the polished table felt the weight of failure pressing down on them. Folders stuffed with financial reports lay open, pens rested stiffly in, anxious hands, and silence stretched so tight it felt like it might snap. Charlie stood at the head of the table, shoulders tense beneath his suit jacket. His jaw clenched as he stared at the bankruptcy documents. He had reviewed the numbers 100 times, searching for any sign of hope, but each page told the same grim story. His company, the company he had spent years building, was seconds away from being declared finished. The CFO cleared his throat. "We need your signature," he said quietly, but the words cut like a blade. "It's the only step left." Charlie exhaled, slow and shaky. He reached for the pen. One signature, and everything he worked for would be gone. His reputation, his employees' security, his future. His hand trembled, just as the CFO repeated, "Sign it, Charlie." A sharp notification echoed through the room. Ping. Everyone froze. Charlie blinked at his open laptop, now glowing with a new message. The subject line was blank. The sender, unfamiliar. He clicked it, more out of instinct than hope. The email held only 3 words, check cell E5. A murmur ran down the table. Charlie's heart kicked against his ribs. He pulled up the spreadsheet automatically, though no one in the room expected anything to change. The financial sheet loaded, rows of numbers filling the screen. He scrolled, found E5, stopped breathing. His eyes widened. The color drained from his face. A single figure, one tiny entry, was wrong. Not slightly, not marginally. It was off by an entire magnitude. A single correction completely altered the outcome. Charlie's chair scraped loudly against the floor as he stood. He whispered, barely audible, This changes everything." Executives exchanged confused looks. Lawyers stiffened. No one understood what had just happened. But Charlie knew. Someone, a stranger, had spotted what his entire team of experts had missed. A waitress from a small diner in Brooklyn. And at that moment, in front of his entire board, Charlie realized his company wasn't collapsing. His company had been saved by her. The boardroom erupted the moment Charlie straightened up. Chairs shifted. Papers rustled. Executives leaned forward with disbelief etched across their faces. "What are you talking about?" One investor demanded. "We've reviewed these numbers for weeks," another snapped. The CFO pushed back from the table, irritation rising. "This isn't the time for second guesses, Charlie. The situation is clear." Charlie shook his head slowly, eyes still fixed on the corrected figure. "No, it isn't." His voice carried an intensity no one expected. He turned the laptop so the entire board could see the highlighted cell. "This number," he said firmly, tapping the screen, "changes the entire financial outcome." Lawyers exchanged looks. Accountants whispered urgently among themselves. "That's impossible," someone barked. "Our documents were checked by 3 independent firms." Yet the room's energy shifted. Doubt crept in. Hope flickered like a small flame refusing to die. Charlie met their stunned expressions, took a steadying breath, and delivered the sentence that flipped the room on its head. "We're not bankrupt." Gasps cut through the air. A few people stood. One investor dropped his pen. The CFO stepped closer, disbelief shaking his voice. "What do you mean we're not bankrupt? That's—" "Look at it," Charlie insisted. They did. Silence washed over the room, thick and heavy. On the screen, plain as day, sat an error so tiny it almost looked harmless. Just one misplaced digit. But that single mistake had flipped profit projections upside down. Correcting it meant the company still had stability, reserves, and room to pivot. Not a collapse, not a shutdown. A revival, a miracle delivered in the most unexpected way. And only one person in the world had caught it. A waitress in Brooklyn the board had never even heard of. The lawyers looked stunned. The executives sat speechless. The CFO lowered his head, shaken by how close they all came to signing away a company worth billions. Charlie exhaled, overwhelmed by a realization hitting him harder than the crisis ever had. Someone out there, someone he barely knew, had just handed him a lifeline. "Let me ask you something," the narrator begins calmly. "Have you ever done something small, something you thought didn't matter, only to realize later it changed everything? Maybe you've been overlooked your whole life," the narrator continues. Maybe people saw your job, your neighborhood, your background, but not your talent. Or maybe you've been in Charlie's position, carrying pressure so heavy that even the most obvious answer slipped past you, trying to stay strong while the weight of expectations sits on your shoulders, making every decision feel like a test you can't afford to fail. Have you ever helped someone without expecting anything back? Ever wondered if your effort, your skill, your kindness really made a difference? Stella didn't know her honesty would save a company. Charlie didn't know a stranger would catch what his entire team missed. Both of them were moving through their lives, just trying to make the best of what they had. The truth is, all of us have moments when we feel unseen. Moments when our abilities sit quietly inside us, waiting for someone to notice. And sometimes, life surprises us. Sometimes the person no one expects becomes the one who changes everything. Charlie was seconds away from signing his company out of existence. His board had already accepted defeat. His advisors had already prepared for the announcement. His future was crumbling faster than he could hold it together. He wasn't just losing money, he was losing the dream he fought for, the people who depended on him, and the belief that he had what it took to lead. Meanwhile, Stella was working double shifts in a Brooklyn diner. She didn't complain, didn't slow down, didn't give up on the goals she put on hold. She balanced serving tables with studying old accounting notes, hoping one day her chance would come. Charlie had no idea she existed. Stella had no reason to think her voice mattered in a world run by executives and high-rise decisions. But neither of them knew their lives were about to collide in a moment that would change both their paths forever. One tiny error, one number buried in a spreadsheet, was overlooked by every professional in Charlie's world. Every consultant, every accountant, every advisor. A slow beat. Everyone, except Stella. The stakes are now crystal clear. She didn't just spot an error. She prevented the downfall of an entire company. But how did Stella, a hard-working Brooklyn waitress with an old accounting textbook, see what trained experts missed? How did she notice a detail that slipped past 3 firms, a full finance team, and a room full of executives? And why did her single act of honesty not only save Charlie's company, but also create a bond that would change both of their lives forever? This isn't just a story about numbers. It's a story about connection, courage, second chances, and finding hope in the most unexpected places. So stay with us, the narrator adds, because what started as a simple correction will lead to. Welcome back to Stories by Mr. Flex, where life's most powerful lessons come wrapped in unforgettable tales. If you're new to this family, thank you for joining us. Please hit the subscribe button because it helps us share stories like this on YouTube. The rain had only grown heavier by the time Charlie stepped onto the narrow Brooklyn sidewalk. His suit jacket clung to his shoulders, soaked through as if the storm itself were pressing down on him. After the chaos in the boardroom and the stunning discovery that halted a financial disaster, he needed a moment to breathe, though he had no idea where to find it. The wind pushed hard against him, sending droplets across his face like cold pinpricks. He scanned the street for somewhere warm, somewhere quiet, somewhere that didn't look like a high-rise office full of pressure and expectations. That's when he saw it, a small corner diner with a glowing red sign flickering slightly, refusing to surrender to the storm. Through the window he could make out people chatting over coffee, laughter rising above the clatter of dishes. It was a world removed from the sterile tension he had just left behind. He pushed open the door, and a bell chimed overhead. The warmth hit him instantly, not just from the heaters, but from the atmosphere itself. A jazz melody hummed softly from an old speaker in the corner. A few regulars called out orders with familiarity, and someone teased a cook for burning a slice of toast. But what caught Charlie's eye first was the woman behind the counter. Stella. Her apron was tied neatly around her waist, hair pulled back, eyes bright despite the long shift. She moved with an easy confidence, like the diner was an extension of her heartbeat, comfortable, warm, rhythmically alive. When she glanced up and saw him dripping on the floor, her mouth curved into a smile that somehow melted the chill in his bones. "Well now," she said, grabbing a fresh towel from behind the counter. "Looks like the rain didn't play fair with you today." Charlie couldn't help but return a small smile. "You could say that." She handed him the towel, and he dried his face, feeling the exhaustion lift slightly. "Any chance you've got something hot?" he asked, voice low and tired. "Plenty," she replied, jotting something quickly on her notepad. "Grab a booth. I'll bring you coffee in a minute. And maybe a slice of pie to fix that long day look you've got." He chuckled, a short sound, but sincere. As he settled into a booth near the window, he noticed how her presence cut through the noise of his mind. There was a kindness in the way she moved, a softness that contrasted sharply with the cutthroat pace of his daily life. Stella returned with a steaming cup of coffee, placing it gently in front of him. "So, rough day?" she asked. Charlie huffed a quiet laugh. "You have no idea." "Well," she said, tapping the table lightly, "whatever it is, coffee won't fix it. But it'll help you not care for a little while." The way she said it, light, playful, yet strangely comforting, made him smile wider than he expected. As she stepped away to check on other customers, Charlie opened his laptop out of habit. The spreadsheet that nearly ruined his career was still open, glowing across the screen. He stared at the corrected numbers, replaying the boardroom scene in his head. That mysterious email, that single line, "Check cell E5, the miraculous correction that flipped everything. He rubbed his temples, exhaustion catching up with him. "Sorry to interrupt," Stella's voice floated back to him as she came by with a warm plate, "but I couldn't help noticing that look." He glanced at her. "What look?" My entire week depends on this one file look," she said with a grin. "People wear it a lot more than they think." Charlie almost laughed, because she wasn't wrong. She leaned slightly toward him, eyes flicking across the open laptop in a respectful, not intrusive way. Numbers filled the screen, rows upon rows of them. She hesitated for a second, then spoke carefully. "I'm not trying to pry," she began, "but one of those numbers looks a little strange." Charlie blinked. "Strange?" She pointed gently to a specific row. "Right there. See that entry? It doesn't match the pattern of the others. Might be nothing, but it looked odd." He frowned, surprised. Not annoyed, just caught off guard. "You understand spreadsheets?" Stella laughed, brushing a curl from her forehead. "A little. I study accounting whenever I get the chance, just not the formal way yet." Her tone stayed light, but there was a quiet pride beneath it, the kind that forms when someone has fought hard to hold on to a dream. Charlie nodded slowly. "You may be onto something," he said, though he still didn't fully understand the impact of her comment. She shrugged and stepped back. "Just thought I'd mention it. Don't want to overstep." "You're not," he assured her. "Really." There was something about her, something steady, something genuine, that pulled him in without effort. He watched her return to the counter, humming softly as she refilled a customer's glass. Even the regulars seemed to brighten around her. Charlie sipped his coffee, letting the warmth settle in his chest. Stella's observation replayed in his mind. The way she said it, the confidence in her tone. She hadn't hesitated to speak up, not out of arrogance, but because she truly cared to help. He found himself smiling again, a waitress noticing what trained analysts didn't. He didn't know it yet, but that moment, that small spark of honesty, would reshape his entire future. As Stella passed by one last time before tending to the grill orders, she nodded at him. "Let me know if you need anything, or if your computer tries to stress you out again." "I will," he said, voice softer. "Thanks." The storm outside kept pouring, but inside that diner, something else had begun. A shift, a connection, a spark of something Charlie couldn't name yet, something he wouldn't forget. He exhaled, set down his cup, and whispered to himself, "Maybe things are starting to change." If you're enjoying the story so far, hit like. It helps the channel grow. The storm had eased by closing time, but the sidewalks outside the diner were still slick with rain. The dinner rush dwindled, leaving only a few loyal customers finishing their meals. Stella moved through the space with her usual rhythm, wiping down tables, humming softly, stacking menus, unaware that her night was about to shift in a way she couldn't have predicted. Charlie had left earlier than most patrons, walking out with a quiet sense of relief that surprised even him. Stella remembered the way he looked back at the diner sign before stepping into the night, as if the place had offered him something he didn't realize he'd been missing. She smiled at the thought and continued cleaning. As she reached the booth where Charlie had been sitting, she froze. There it was, his laptop, still open, still glowing faintly, still resting exactly where he'd placed it. "Oh no," she whispered. Her heart thumped. She knew how important the files were to him. Anyone could see it in the way he stared at the numbers earlier, with a focus so tight it nearly swallowed him whole. Losing this would crush his night, maybe even his entire week. She glanced around. The diner was nearly empty, her co-workers in the back prepping for close. Carefully, she slid the laptop closer, noting the dimming battery indicator. "He must need this," she muttered. "No way I can let it die." It felt wrong to touch someone else's device, but letting it shut down seemed worse. She folded her lips together, debating. After a breath, she made a decision. She reached under the booth for an outlet and plugged the charger in. The laptop brightened instantly. As the screen came fully into view, her eyes landed on the same spreadsheet she'd seen earlier. The same row, the same strange number. The diner noises faded into the background as Stella stared. She didn't want to pry. She respected privacy, but the spreadsheet was already open, impossible to ignore. And the number, that odd number she'd pointed out, was right in front of her again. Her training from college crept back into her mind. She couldn't help it. Her eyes traced the pattern of the figures instinctively. She murmured softly to herself, "That one doesn't belong." It wasn't arrogance. It wasn't curiosity. It was simply her gift, seeing what didn't fit. She sat down, just for a moment, and zoomed in on the row. There it was again. A misplaced digit, off by an entire magnitude, enough to destroy a calculation chain, enough to warp a balance sheet, enough to send an entire company into panic. Her chest tightened. This wasn't a small mistake. This wasn't something someone shrugged off in a classroom assignment. This was the kind of error people lost careers over, the kind that caused consequences far bigger than numbers on a screen. She pulled her hands back and closed her eyes briefly. "This isn't my business," she whispered to herself. But what if he doesn't see it? What if no one sees it? Her conscience tugged at her. Her common sense tugged back. She stood, paced a small circle between the booths, returned to the laptop, and stared at the highlighted cell again. What would Grandma say? She asked under her breath. She knew exactly what her grandmother would say. If you can help someone, help them. Don't second-guess kindness. Stella inhaled deeply, sat back down, and opened a blank email draft. Her fingers hovered over the keys. This wasn't about pride. This wasn't about attention. This was about doing the right thing. She typed, "Checks out E5. Simple. Clear. Enough to guide him without overstepping." Before sending, she hesitated one last time. Her heart thudded like it was trying to warn her. What if he got upset? What if he thought she invaded his privacy? What if she made everything worse? She closed her eyes, exhaled steadily, and clicked send. The email vanished into the digital space, carrying her hope with it. She gently logged out, closed the laptop, and placed it carefully on the counter, in the back, so that whoever came in for lost items would find it safely. Just as she let out a long breath, a familiar voice cut through her thoughts. "Well now, Stella," called Mr. Harvey, one of the diner's most loyal regulars, leaning back in his booth with a teasing smirk. "You fixing strangers' math homework again?" Stella blinked. "What? No, Mr. Harvey, I wasn't." "Oh, please," he chuckled. "I seen that look. You only get that look when you're helping somebody who didn't even ask for it. You've been doing that since the day you learned to tie an apron." She flushed, flustered but amused. "It's nothing like that." He raised a brow knowingly. Well, don't go breaking your neck trying to save the whole world." She laughed under her breath as she wiped a nearby table. "Just trying to be useful, that's all." "Well, useful is good," he said. "Just don't forget to be careful, too." His tone softened then, the unexpected moment interrupting her storm of thoughts, and she nodded gratefully before returning to her cleaning. But the moment she was alone again, doubt crept in. What if she misunderstood the numbers? What if she'd pointed out something that wasn't even relevant? What if Charlie dismissed the message entirely? Or worse, what if he thought she crossed a line? She pressed her palms into the counter and closed her eyes. "You did what you could," she whispered to herself. "You helped. That has to be enough." The rain outside finally eased to a light drizzle, tapping softly against the diner's windows. Stella finished her tasks, took one last glance at the laptop resting on the shelf, and hoped, quietly, sincerely, that the stranger from earlier would understand her heart was in the right place. Her fear lingered. Her pride flickered. Her hope stayed steady. Whatever came next was out of her hands. The morning arrived far too quickly for Charlie. He had barely slept, his mind replaying figures, projections, deadlines, and the suffocating pressure that still clung to his chest. Even with the rain gone and the sun stretching through the Manhattan skyline, He felt the weight of failure pressing down on him. Today was supposed to be the end, the day he signed away his company to debt and defeat. His suit was immaculate, but his eyes told a different story. As he stepped out of the elevator onto the executive floor, everyone sensed the tension radiating from him. Assistants whispered. Advisors exchanged weary looks. Lawyers paced near the boardroom doors, shuffling documents already prepared for signatures. Charlie inhaled deeply, trying to steady his nerves before entering. But the nagging thought from last night tugged at him. The mysterious email. The message so short it almost felt unreal. Check cell E5. He hadn't had the courage to open it again. Not yet. Not with everything collapsing so quickly. But as he pushed open the boardroom doors and saw the expectant faces awaiting, his final approval, something inside him muted the noise of the room. He knew he had to look. The boardroom was alive with murmurs. The CFO stood near the head of the table, flipping through pages one last time. Investors sat stiffly, their expressions hardened by weeks of bad news. The company lawyer adjusted his tie, ready to finalize the bankruptcy filing. Charlie walked toward his seat, laptop tucked beneath his arm. He placed it on the table, fingers trembling slightly as he opened it. The CFO noticed. "We're ready whenever you are," he said, trying to sound calm. Charlie nodded faintly, but didn't lift the pen. He clicked the email icon instead. There it was, the anonymous message. Plain, unadorned, almost haunting. Check cell E5. He clicked on the spreadsheet file, the one that had haunted him for days. Rows of calculations loaded, each number representing a terrifying reality he had been forced to accept. Until now, he scrolled deliberately. Past profit projections, past operating costs, down to the row Stella had mentioned. E5. His breath caught. The room blurred slightly, noise fading into the background. The misplaced digit stared back at him, a single figure that completely flipped their financial standing. A mistake so simple, so small, it was almost unbelievable. Yet the consequences of it had nearly destroyed everything. Charlie gripped the edge of his chair. "Hold on," he whispered instinctively. The CFO frowned. "What is it?" Charlie didn't answer immediately. He zoomed in, double-checked, recalculated in his head. The results repeated themselves like a quiet truth shouting louder each second. He stood abruptly. "We can't sign those papers," he said, voice cutting through the murmurs. The room went silent. An investor blinked hard. "What do you mean we can't sign them?" Charlie turned his laptop to face the room. "There's an error in the financial models." The CFO's brows pulled together. "That's impossible." These numbers were reviewed by multiple firms. "Reviewed incorrectly," Charlie replied, surprising himself with how certain he sounded. Lawyers glanced nervously at one another. The lead attorney stepped forward. "Charlie, we're already behind schedule. Everything has been verified." "No," Charlie said firmly, shaking his head. "Not everything." Executives leaned closer. One whispered, "What are we looking at?" Charlie tapped the screen. "Right here, E5. This number was entered wrong. The mistake threw off the entire projection for cash flow for the next quarter." The CFO scoffed. "That one number wouldn't undo months of losses." "Look again," Charlie shot back. Irritation flickered in the CFO's eyes, but he pulled a copy of the spreadsheets toward him. He recalculated hesitantly. Then again. Then one more time. His face changed. The irritation vanished, replaced first by confusion, then disbelief, then a stunned, grudging acknowledgement. "Oh," he muttered, voice barely audible. An investor stood from his chair so quickly it scraped the floor. "Is he saying—" Charlie nodded. "Yes, this changes everything. We're not collapsing. We're not insolvent. That one faulty entry made it look that way." The room erupted. Executives shouted questions. Lawyers demanded explanations. Investors leaned across the table, frantic. How did every auditor miss this? Someone yelled. Another snapped. "This mistake nearly cost us the entire company." The CFO closed his eyes, rubbing his temples. I don't understand how this happened." As the chaos swelled, Charlie's mind drifted back to a diner, a warm smile, a woman with careful eyes who didn't hesitate to speak up, a waitress who noticed what no one else did. He swallowed hard. "She saw it," he whispered. "What?" an executive asked. Charlie blinked, pulling himself back into the present. Someone outside the company noticed the mistake. They sent me an email last night." A few heads whipped around. From who? Charlie didn't answer yet. He simply stared at the highlighted number, still amazed by how one quiet act from a stranger saved them all. As the room finally began to steady, as voices lowered and the lawyers started, revising their assessments, Charlie stepped away from the table for a moment. He let out a slow breath, his chest tightening with gratitude he couldn't explain. He whispered under his breath, "Whoever you are, thank you." The CFO approached him again, still shaken. "Charlie, we need to reconvene. This changes our entire outlook. We'll need new projections, revised documents, new meetings." Charlie nodded distantly. Of course, but his mind wasn't on the numbers anymore. It was on the person who noticed what dozens of analysts had missed. Someone with a sharp eye. Someone with courage. Someone he suddenly needed to find. As the boardroom scrambled to rebuild their plans, Charlie stood silently at the window, watching the city stretch out before him, alive, loud, and full of possibility. He didn't know her name yet, but he would, because she had saved everything. The following morning, the atmosphere in Charlie's office felt completely different. Yesterday had been a storm of panic and relief, numbers and disbelief, but today carried an undeniable clarity. His company had been moments from collapse, and the miracle that saved it came from one anonymous line, "Check cell E5." He needed to know who sent it. His assistant, Maya, entered with a laptop tucked in her arm. "Good morning, Charlie. I traced the email." Charlie looked up immediately, and it didn't come from any consulting firm, not an accountant, not an advisor. It was sent from a little diner in Brooklyn. He froze. "A diner? Do you want the address?" Maya asked gently. He grabbed his coat. "No. I'm going there myself." The diner looked different in daylight, livelier, brighter, buzzing with the energy of morning regulars. Some customers laughed over pancakes while others sipped coffee before their shifts. But Stella stood at the center of it all, moving with practiced ease as she balanced orders and conversations. She had just set down a plate of waffles when she noticed someone entering. The diner with a presence that instantly shifted the room's attention. Charlie. Her heart nearly jumped out of her chest. Why is he here? Did I do something wrong? Did that email upset him? Panic shot through her. She hurried to the counter, whispering to herself, "Oh no, oh no, no, no. I'm not ready for this." Charlie spotted her immediately and walked toward her with a purposeful stride. Stella swallowed hard. Her palms were sweating, her breath unsteady. Never in her life had she expected the CEO she helped to show up, here in front of her coworkers, customers, and her own nerves. "Stella," Charlie asked gently. Her eyes widened. "Ah, yes, that's me." The room quieted. The cook peeked out from the kitchen window. Mr. Harvey sat up straighter in his booth, ready to witness whatever was about to unfold. Charlie took a breath, and for a moment, Stella braced herself for reprimand. "Yesterday," he began, "someone saved my entire company." Stella's heart stopped. Charlie continued, "A single message corrected an error that every accountant missed. That message came from you." Gasps rippled through the diner. Stella's knees nearly buckled. "Wait, saved your company?" I just pointed out a number that changed everything," Charlie said. "You prevented thousands of people from losing their jobs. You stopped an unnecessary bankruptcy. You saved us." Stella's co-workers stared in shock. One whispered, "Stella? Our Stella?" Charlie smiled warmly and extended his hand. "Thank you." She stared at his hand like it was made of glass. Slowly, with trembling fingers, she took it. Mr. Harvey grinned from his booth. "I told you she was always helping people." The diner erupted in applause. Stella covered her face, overwhelmed. I didn't expect any of this. I just did what felt right." "You did more than right," Charlie said softly, "and I want to thank you properly. Would you come to my office today? My team wants to meet the person who saved us." Her eyes widened in disbelief. "Me? In your office? In Manhattan?" Charlie nodded. "You deserve it." Just as Stella tried to process everything, her phone buzzed loudly in her apron pocket. She pulled it out instinctively. "Grandma calling," she muttered. Charlie chuckled, stepping aside politely. Stella answered with shaky breath. "Baby," her grandmother's voice boomed through the speaker, "did you remember to thaw that chicken for dinner?" Stella shut her eyes. "Grandma, now is not the time." "Why not? You know I don't like last-minute cooking." "Grandma," she whispered urgently. The man whose laptop I found came back. He said I saved his entire company. A dramatic gasp exploded through the phone. Lord have mercy. Did you at least offer him a biscuit? Stella nearly dropped the phone. The entire diner stifled laughter. Charlie smiled kindly, whispering, "Take your time." After convincing her grandmother she was not, in fact, proposing marriage to a CEO in the middle of a work shift, Stella finally hung up, face flushed, eyes wide, nerves buzzing. Charlie offered a gentle nod. "Whenever you're ready, my office is expecting you." Stella swallowed hard. "Okay, I'll come." "Good," he said. "I'll send a car." Her coworkers erupted again. As Charlie stepped outside, Stella exhaled, leaning heavily on the counter. Mr. Harvey called over, "Girl, you better wear something nice. Today just became your big day." Stella covered her face with her hands. What in the world was happening? Stella had never been inside a luxury car before. She sat stiffly in the back seat, hands folded tightly in her lap, trying to ignore the butterflies spinning in her stomach. The city rolled by outside her window, tall buildings stretching into the morning sky, and every block seemed to whisper the same impossible truth. She was going to a CEO's office, not to serve food, not to refill coffee, but because she saved his company. She inhaled slowly, reminding herself not to panic. But the moment her reflection appeared in the window, apron gone, replaced with her nicest blouse, and a simple gold necklace her grandmother gave her, she nearly lost her breath again. "Okay, Stella," she muttered softly. "You belong here. You did something important. Just breathe." The car turned onto a wide avenue lined with gleaming towers. One building stood taller and sharper than the rest, with mirrored windows that seemed to touch the clouds. Charlie's building. The vehicle rolled to a stop beside the marble entrance. A doorman stepped forward immediately, opening the car door with a polite nod. "Stella, welcome." Her eyes widened. "You know my name?" "Yes, ma'am. Mr. Charlie instructed us to expect you." Her heart hammered. Inside the lobby, everything gleamed. The floors, the lights, the towering greenery placed along the walkway. She followed the receptionist's direction to the executive elevator, each step feeling surreal. When the elevator doors slid open onto the top floor, Charlie was waiting for her. He offered a warm smile. "I'm glad you came." She felt her nerves ease slightly. "Still feels unreal," she admitted. "Trust me," Charlie said with a quiet laugh. "Everyone here feels the same way." He led her down a hallway lined with glass doors until they reached the boardroom. Voices echoed from inside, low, formal, businesslike. Stella hesitated at the doorway. Charlie turned to her gently. "Ready?" She swallowed. "As ready as I'll ever be." He pushed open the door. Every conversation stopped. Executives turned their heads. Advisors straightened. Even CFO Randall, usually unreadable, blinked in surprise. The woman standing beside Charlie, the one who saved them, was not a consultant or analyst. She was Stella. From the diner, Charlie stepped forward, voice steady but warm. "Everyone," he announced, "this is Stella. She's the reason we're standing here today with a future instead of a shutdown." A ripple of surprise swept through the room. Stella stood frozen, hands clasped. She was sure someone would question her, challenge her, or dismiss her. But something very different happened. The head of operations, a stern woman rarely seen smiling, began clapping. Slowly at first, then louder. Others joined in. The applause filled the entire boardroom, bouncing off every glass wall. Stella's breath caught in her throat. She blinked hard, overwhelmed by the sight of business leaders applauding. For her, when the room quieted, Charlie continued, her observation corrected an error that our entire team and multiple firms missed. Because of her, we now have the chance to rebuild instead of collapse. CFO Randall shifted uncomfortably but approached Stella with his hand extended. "I owe you an apology and a thank you. I didn't believe the error was real until I recalculated it myself." Stella stared at his hand for a brief moment before shaking it carefully. "Thank you, sir." Randall's lips twitched, not quite a smile but close. "If you ever want a job in finance, you'd be an asset." Charlie turned to her. "Actually, that's something I wanted to discuss." Stella stiffened slightly. Charlie continued gently. "If you're open to it, we'd love to offer you a consulting role. Flexible hours, good pay, and you'd help us avoid mistakes like this in the future." Her heart skipped. The room grew quiet again, waiting. Stella exhaled slowly, choosing her words with care. "Thank you," she began. "Really, it means more than I can say. But I like my diner, I like my community, and I'm not ready to leave what I love." Charlie nodded with respect, not disappointment. "I understand." A few board members exchanged shocked glances. Turning down an offer like that wasn't common, but Stella wasn't common either. She was grounded, steady, honest, exactly the kind of person who had saved them. Charlie guided her to a seat at the big table. She sat lightly, still trying to process everything. He leaned in slightly. "You okay?" "Trying to be," she whispered with a nervous smile. He chuckled softly. "That's fair." During the meeting, Charlie invited Stella to listen to how the company would recover now that bankruptcy was no longer looming. Stella paid close attention, not because she had to, but because she valued learning. Charlie noticed the way she watched the slides, absorbing new information with quiet focus. At one point, a small data glitch showed up on a projection screen, a formatting issue that froze the slide. People shouted for IT. Someone panicked about the software. Stella leaned forward casually. "Try refreshing the pane, not the whole program." Charlie clicked exactly where she pointed. The slide jumped back to life. Murmurs filled the room. The CFO muttered, "She's good." Charlie tried not to smile too widely. When the meeting ended, Charlie walked Stella back toward the elevator. Neither of them rushed. Neither of them seemed eager for the moment to end. "Thank you again," he said softly. "Not just for yesterday, but for being you." Stella felt her cheeks warm. "You're welcome." He hesitated. "Just a second. Before you leave, there's something I'd like to ask." She tilted her head. "What is it?" "Dinner," he said. "Nothing formal, nothing fancy. Just me saying thank you in a way that doesn't involve spreadsheets or applause." She blinked, surprised, but not confused, not uncomfortable, just seen. Her smile rose gently. "I'd like that." They stood there for a moment, long enough for the elevator to ding twice before either of them moved. Finally, Charlie stepped back, letting the elevator doors open fully. "I'll text you the time," he said. Stella nodded and stepped inside. Just before the doors closed, she added softly. Charlie laughed, a warm, honest laugh he hadn't felt in a long time. "If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to like. It helps the channel grow." Stella stood in front of her bedroom mirror, adjusting the collar of her soft blue blouse for what felt like the 10th time. She wasn't trying to impress Charlie, at least that's what she told herself, but she also didn't want to show up to a CEO's dinner looking like she had rushed. Over from the diner, her grandmother watched from the doorway, arms folded, a knowing grin tugging at her lips. "You keep touching that shirt," her grandmother teased. "You'll iron the color right out of it." Stella rolled her eyes playfully. "I just want to look presentable." "You always do," her grandmother replied. "Now go. Don't keep that nice young man waiting." Stella grabbed her purse, kissed her grandmother's cheek, and hurried out the door before she had to endure another round of loving commentary. Outside, a gentle breeze carried the soft scent of evening over Brooklyn. A black car, less flashy than the one that picked her up earlier, but still far more polished than anything she typically rode in, waited at the curb. The driver greeted her warmly. "Miss Stella, Mr. Charlie asked me to bring you to the restaurant." Her heart fluttered. Hearing her name paired with his still felt unreal. The restaurant Charlie had chosen wasn't one of those intimidating upscale places with silent waiters and tiny portions. Instead, it was a quiet cafe tucked along a Manhattan side street, lit by warm lamps and humming with an easy, comfortable atmosphere. The walls held shelves lined with old books and framed jazz records, giving the room a cozy charm. Charlie stood when he saw her walk through the door. "Stella," he said, smiling softly. "Glad you made it." She smiled back. "I said no spreadsheets, remember?" He laughed, stepping forward. "Trust me. Tonight is strictly spreadsheet free." They found their seats near a window overlooking the street. Outside, people rushed by in the glow of evening, but inside, everything slowed to a gentle, grounding calm. A server brought water and menus, but Charlie didn't look at his. He looked at her, his expression open in a way she hadn't seen in the boardroom. "I've been thinking about how to thank you," he said. "You already did," she replied. "Twice." "Not enough," he countered. "What you did wasn't small." Stella shook her head gently. "I didn't do it for recognition. I just saw something and said something. Anyone would have done that. He looked at her with quiet sincerity. Not everyone would have cared. Before she could respond, he reached beneath the table and lifted a small white box. I wanted to give you something, he said. Her brows rose slightly. Charlie, you didn't have to. It's not anything extravagant, he assured her. Just something I thought you might find useful. She opened the box, slowly. Inside was a brand new tablet, sleek, lightweight, modern. Her breath caught. I noticed your old accounting books, he explained, and I know how expensive updated materials are. I figured this might help you with practice, studying, or anything you want it for. Stella stared at it, stunned. Charlie, this is too much. It's not, he said softly. And you deserve tools that support your talent. She swallowed hard, moved by the thoughtfulness rather than the gift itself. But then he slid an envelope toward her. And this is something else I wanted you to have. She didn't need to open it to guess what it was. No, she said gently, pushing it back toward him. Charlie, thank you, really. But I can't accept money. Tuition is something I'll work toward myself. I need to do that on my own terms. For a moment he seemed unsure whether to insist, but then he smiled. A genuine, respectful smile. I understand, he said, and I respect that. The tension eased instantly, replaced by the warm kind of silence that only forms between people who truly hear each other. They ordered dinner. Nothing fancy, just hearty dishes that filled the space with comforting aromas. Conversation flowed easily. Stella found herself laughing more than she expected. Charlie teased lightly. You know, the last time someone pointed out an error in my work, it was my college professor. I didn't listen to him either. Stella raised a brow. So ignoring women with good advice is a habit for you? He pressed a hand to his chest, dramatically. Ouch, fair. But I've learned my lesson. She chuckled. We'll see. He grinned. I'm counting that as progress. They talked about where they grew up. Stella shared stories of family barbecues, church choirs, and her grandmother's legendary sweet potato pie. Charlie talked about being raised in a home full of structure and expectations, where success was measured by achievements rather than joy. Stella tilted her head thoughtfully. So you listened to jazz at home, but secretly? He smirked. Very secretly. My parents liked silence. Well, she said, that explains why you look so relieved whenever music starts playing. His laughter filled the room. Warm, natural, lighter than she'd ever heard it. When dessert arrived, Charlie accidentally flicked whipped cream onto his tie. Stella burst into laughter. He looked down. Wow, I can run a company, but a dessert spoon defeats me. Oh no, she teased, wiping a tear from laughter. The mighty tie has been stained. Whatever will we do? He shook his head dramatically. I knew you'd make fun of me. You set yourself up, she said, still laughing. They lingered over coffee afterward, letting the evening stretch warmly around them. When they finally stepped outside, the air was cool and gentle. Charlie walked her to the car, hands tucked in his pockets like he didn't want the night to end. Thank you for coming, he said quietly. Thank you for inviting me, she replied. He hesitated. A tiny pause filled with something unspoken. Then he smiled, softer this time. Good night, Stella. She stepped into the car, closing the door with a light thud. As the vehicle pulled away, she glanced back through the window. Charlie was still standing there, watching her leave, with the faintest, happiest smile she'd ever seen him wear. The next few weeks unfolded in a way Stella never expected and Charlie could hardly believe. Their dinner together had ended gently, without heavy implications or rushed emotions, yet something unmistakable lingered between them, an ease, a warmth, a pull neither of them tried to deny. It started small. A text from Charlie the next morning. Did your grandmother ever thaw the chicken? Stella laughed out loud in the diner kitchen, nearly dropping a bowl of biscuit dough. She replied barely. She acted like it was national news. From then on, their messages became a daily rhythm. Not long paragraphs, just thoughtful check-ins, light jokes, photos of funny street, signs Charlie passed, or Stella's snapshots of Central Park squirrels acting bold. Soon they began meeting on purpose. Their first brunch took place at a cozy spot in Brooklyn that Charlie had never tasted before. Stella introduced him to chicken and waffles with hot honey. Charlie, skeptical, took one bite and instantly surrendered. You've been hiding this from me, he said dramatically. You're welcome, Stella smirked. After brunch they took slow walks through Central Park. Charlie, who usually rushed between meetings, found himself strolling without staring at his phone. Stella pointed out little things, a family having a picnic, someone learning guitar, a couple dancing near the fountain. "Do you ever stop and just breathe?" Stella asked. Charlie admitted he rarely did. That's when she introduced him to mindfulness, small pauses, intentional breathing, noticing details he normally overlooked. 5 seconds, she said one afternoon. Breathe in, breathe out, no deadlines, no pressure. Surprisingly, Charlie followed. And surprisingly, it helped. One chilly evening, Stella visited Charlie's apartment for the first time. It wasn't planned. He had forgotten his umbrella at the diner, and she offered to return it after her shift. Inside, she immediately noticed the vintage turntable beside his bookshelf. "You collect records?" she asked. Charlie nodded. "Mostly jazz. It's how I unwind." He played a soft track, mellow saxophone, warm notes swirling through the room like a quiet confession. Stella closed her eyes and listened. "This is beautiful. It's called Autumn Light. My favorite." She smiled. "Teach me more?" He tried to keep his voice steady. "Gladly." Stella, in return, introduced him to some of her own favorites, soft R&B, gospel harmonies, and the classic choir pieces she grew up singing. She tapped her fingers to the beat, humming gently under her breath. Charlie watched her like she was music herself. Their tastes blended effortlessly, her soulfulness, his structure, creating moments neither of them wanted to end. The day Stella's grandmother found out she had gone on a second outing with Charlie, she nearly dropped an entire pan of cornbread. "Twice? You saw him twice?" her grandmother demanded, pointing a wooden spoon at her. "It's not that serious," Stella insisted, flustered. "We're just spending time together. With a CEO? It's not about that." Her grandmother's eyes softened. "Good. As long as he's treating you right." He was. On Charlie's side, his best friend Kai noticed the change instantly. "You're smiling more," Kai said one morning as they prepared for a meeting. "And not the corporate kind, the real kind." Charlie tried to downplay it. "Stella's different." Kai grinned. "Different? In a good way?" "Very good." And that was the truth. The shift between them wasn't dramatic. It didn't come with fireworks or confessions. It came through shared laughter, comfortable silence, warm glances, the steady building of trust. One evening, after another long walk in the park, Stella stopped near the bridge overlooking the water. "You ever get scared?" she asked softly, "when something good starts happening?" Charlie paused. "Yes, all the time." She turned to him, surprised. "I've built a life around control," he explained. "But with you, I don't want control. I just want moments like this." A gentle warmth rose in her chest. She didn't rush to label what they were, neither did he, but both felt something opening, a door to possibilities neither expected. When Charlie dropped her off that night, their goodbye lasted a little longer than usual. Not a kiss, not yet, but a closeness that promised the future had something to say. A few days later, Stella texted him, "Client at the diner just argued with me about how to spell omelet." Charlie replied, "How did he spell it?" "Omelett." "That's a lot of commitment to eggs." She burst out laughing, startling a customer nearby. More moments like this stitched their connection tighter. One Thursday evening after a long day at work, Charlie invited Stella to meet him for a walk. She agreed, sensing something on his mind. They sat on a bench overlooking the river, the city lights flickering like quiet reflections of their thoughts. "I never told you this," Charlie began, "but before the crisis, I felt trapped in my own success. I lost the ability to enjoy anything." Stella listened, leaning in slightly. "You remind me what calm feels like," he said. "What life outside work feels like." For a man like Charlie, guarded, polished, always composed, saying that out loud was huge. Stella didn't tease him, didn't downplay it, didn't rush a response. She simply placed her hand gently over his. "I'm glad," she whispered. Their fingers didn't interlock yet, but they didn't pull apart either. It was enough, more than enough. Sunday morning sunlight poured over Brooklyn like a soft blessing as Stella stood beside Charlie outside her family church. The brick building wasn't large, but it had a certain warmth, a place stitched together by community, family, and memories. Charlie smoothed his collar nervously. "So, this is the church you grew up in?" Stella smiled. Yep. And don't worry, they don't bite. Your grandmother might, he joked. Stella elbowed him lightly. Behave. They stepped through the double doors and instantly Charlie felt the shift. The air buzzed with joy. Voices echoed in greeting. Someone hugged Stella before she made it 2 steps inside. Sugar, look at you bringing company today. Stella laughed. Hi, Miss Ramona. This is Charlie. Miss Ramona sized him up with a glance sharp enough to cut glass, then nodded with approval. He got good posture. That's a good sign. Charlie blinked. Stella whispered, just smile. They moved down the aisle as the choir prepared for their first song. People waved at Stella, whispered greetings, and offered curious glances at Charlie. He wasn't offended, just humbled. For once, he wasn't the CEO everyone recognized. He was just a man Stella brought with her. They took their seats. The choir director raised her hand, and the first note rang out, deep, rich, full of life. Charlie's breath caught. The voices lifted together, harmonizing with a power he wasn't prepared for. The sound filled the room like sunlight made audible. Stella glanced at him. Charlie's eyes glistened. You okay? She whispered. He nodded slowly, overwhelmed. This is beautiful. Throughout the song, Charlie let the music wash over him. The rhythm, the soul, the raw emotion. It wasn't background noise like the elite galas he attended. This was connection. This was history. This was love woven into melody. When Stella stood to sing with the choir on the next hymn, Charlie watched in awe. Her voice blended perfectly with the group, warm and steady, lifting the melody like it was part of her heartbeat. After the service, Stella rejoined him, cheeks slightly flushed. You didn't tell me you could sing, Charlie said. You didn't ask, she replied with a shy smile. Her grandmother found them in the crowd. Charlie, good to see you. Stella tells me you like jazz. You know, her grandfather used to play saxophone. Charlie's eyes lit. Really? Oh, yes. He taught Stella a little rhythm when she was a kid. Stella groaned. Grandma. Don't grandma me. It's true. Charlie laughed. Stella sighed. They walked out together, sunlight warming their faces. As they headed to the car, Charlie said softly, Thank you for bringing me. Stella looked at him, really looked, and for a moment it felt like the space between them shifted. You're welcome, she said quietly. I'm glad you came. The charity gala buzzed with its usual mix of polished gowns, sharp suits, champagne glasses, and conversations about donations and business ventures. But this time, something was different. Charlie didn't walk in alone. Stella stood beside him, wearing a simple black dress that hugged her shape without trying too hard. Her hair was curled softly, her earrings small and elegant. She didn't look out of place. She didn't look intimidated. She looked radiant. Heads turned instantly. Charlie whispered, Ignore the staring. I'm not bothered, she whispered back. They're just surprised you brought someone who isn't from this world. Charlie's jaw tightened slightly. You belong anywhere you choose to be. She glanced at him with gratitude, and maybe something deeper. As they walked through the room, a few donors greeted Charlie with polite smiles. But their eyes flicked toward Stella with curiosity, even confusion. Stella noticed, of course she did, but she kept her shoulders straight. She wasn't here to impress anyone. Charlie guided her toward the main hall where a soft jazz band played. The saxophone hummed warmly, and Stella nudged him playfully. Look at that, she whispered. Your type of music. And yours, he replied. As they reached their table, Kai greeted Stella warmly. Good to see you again. Charlie's been talking about you non-stop. Charlie nearly choked. Kai, Stella laughed. Good to see you too. Dinner began. Stella listened politely to the conversation around her. Talk of investments, charity partnerships, renewable energy expansions. She didn't pretend to know everything, but she also didn't shrink back. When someone asked what she did, Stella answered calmly, I work at a diner in Brooklyn. A few brows rose. One woman murmured, how charming, in a tone that wasn't fully kind. But Stella didn't flinch. She simply smiled. It is. The food is great. Charlie watched her with admiration. She didn't try to change herself for anyone in the room. Halfway through the evening, the jazz band played a song with a lively beat, unexpected for such a formal event. The room shifted awkwardly, uncertain. But Stella felt the rhythm. Without overthinking, she did a small, smooth two-step right beside Charlie. Just a playful move. Nothing dramatic. But the moment she did it, heads turned. Kai burst into laughter. Now that's what this event needed. Charlie stared at her, charmed beyond words. Where did you learn that? Church picnics, she whispered. The uptight atmosphere of the room cracked. People smiled. Some swayed lightly. Stella's authenticity cut through the stiffness like sunlight. Charlie leaned close. You're amazing. Stella giggled softly. It's just a two-step. No, he said, voice low and genuine. It's you. The chemistry hit them both. Clear, warm, undeniable, but still gentle, not rushed. They didn't push it. They didn't force it. They just existed in it. Later that night, as they stepped outside into the cool air, Charlie held Stella's wrap around her shoulders. Thank you, he said. For tonight, and for being exactly who you are. Stella looked at him, her smile softening. Same to you. They stood close, not touching but close enough that the silence between them felt like the beginning of something promising. The week after the gala, Stella woke up to a string of text messages, some from her coworkers teasing her about her famous two-step, and one from Charlie simply saying, still smiling about last night, "Hope your morning is peaceful." She smiled at her phone before rolling out of bed, but the quiet warmth of the morning would soon meet the uneasy tension she'd been avoiding. Her sister, Danielle. Danielle sat at the kitchen table with coffee in hand, eyebrows raised the moment Stella walked in. So, Danielle began, arms crossed, "You've been spending a lot of time with this Charlie guy." Stella paused. "Yeah, I have." Danielle leaned forward, skeptical. "And you really think a man like that is serious?" Stella stiffened. "What's that supposed to mean?" "You know what I mean," Danielle replied. "He's rich, he's corporate, he lives in Manhattan. You think he's looking for something real with someone who works at a diner?" Stella bit back a sharp breath. "Danielle, he isn't like that." "Every guy says he isn't like that," Danielle countered. "I just don't want you getting hurt again. People from his world don't stay for long." Stella set her jaw. "I appreciate you caring, but don't judge him before you know him." Danielle softened a little but still shook her head. "Just be careful, okay?" Stella nodded, though her heart ached. She wanted her sister to see what she saw, the gentleness beneath Charlie's polished exterior, the way he listened, the way he breathed differently when he was with her. Charlie entered his office with a spring in his step, something his team hadn't seen in months. Kai smirked. "Someone's glowing today." Charlie tried to act normal. "I'm fine." "You're not fine," Kai teased. "You're doing that tiny half smile you get when you like someone." Charlie glared playfully. "Don't you have actual work to do?" But outside Kai's joking, not everyone reacted warmly. As Charlie stepped into the boardroom for a strategy meeting, a few co-workers exchanged glances, not hostile but curious in a way he didn't appreciate. One advisor whispered, "He's distracted lately." Another murmured, "Ever since that waitress came around." CFO Randall cleared his throat, drawing attention away, but the message lingered in the air. Charlie kept his composure. His personal life was none of their concern, and Stella's value wasn't measured by job titles. Still, the whispers annoyed him more than he expected. After the meeting, Randall approached him. "Charlie," he said, "word of advice, people notice things, just be cautious." "Cautious of what?" Charlie responded calmly. Randall hesitated. "Your reputation, and hers." Charlie's jaw tightened, but he didn't lash out. Instead, he simply said, "I respect your concern. But Stella deserves respect too." Randall nodded, surprised but not argumentative. Later that afternoon, Stella received a message from an unfamiliar number. "Hi Stella, this is Selena Parker. I'm a longtime business acquaintance of Charlie's. Could we meet briefly?" Stella's eyebrows furrowed. Selena Parker? She'd heard that name before. Charlie once mentioned her in passing, a competitive business rival known for aggressive tactics. Stella hesitated, then agreed to meet at a cafe near her diner. When Stella arrived, Selena was already seated, sharp suit, sharper posture. She looked Stella up and down with a polite but pointed gaze. "Stella," Selena said, extending a hand. "Good to meet you." "Nice to meet you too," Stella replied cautiously. Selena didn't waste time. "I'll be direct. I've heard about your contribution to Charlie's company. Very impressive." Stella nodded politely. "Thank you. I'm offering you a position at my firm," Selena continued. "Excellent salary, full benefits, growth opportunities. Stella blinked. I didn't apply for anything. I'm offering because I see potential, Selena said smoothly. And because someone like you shouldn't be stuck in a diner forever. The comment landed like a slap, disguised as kindness. Stella straightened. I'm not stuck. Selena tilted her head. Isn't it time you aimed higher? I am aiming higher, Stella said gently. Just not in the way you think. Selena's expression cooled. If you change your mind, the offer stands. Though I must say, Charlie tends to lose focus. Be careful not to become collateral. That did it. Stella stood. Thanks for the offer. But no. Selena's brows lifted. No, Stella repeated firmly. I know what matters to me. And it's not positioning myself in someone's rivalry. Selena watched her walk out, expression darkening. That evening, Stella waited for Charlie to call. It had become their routine. He always checked in after work, even on hectic days. But tonight, nothing. She texted once, hope your day went well. No reply. Hours passed. Stella tried to stay calm, but Danielle's words echoed. He's from a different world. He might not be serious. Don't get hurt. By the time the clock struck 10, worry turned into a soft ache of disappointment. Did he forget about her? Was he pulling away? Was Selena right? Stella lay in bed, overthinking every moment of the last few weeks. Her chest tightened. Charlie wasn't avoiding Stella. He was drowning in work, an emergency meeting about auditors, a last-minute investor. Call that ran, hours late, and a technical glitch that required his full attention. By the time he checked his phone, it was almost midnight. He saw Stella's message. His stomach dropped. He immediately called her. She answered after 2 rings, her voice quiet. Hey, Stella, he breathed. I'm so sorry. It's okay, she said softly. No, it's not. Today spiraled. I should have messaged you sooner. Stella exhaled. I didn't want to assume anything. I just didn't hear from you. Charlie sat down on the edge of his bed, his voice gentle. You matter to me. I wouldn't ignore you. Not on purpose, not ever. Her chest loosened. Communication is something I'm working on, Charlie admitted. But I'll always tell you the truth. Stella closed her eyes, letting his sincerity settle. Thank you, she whispered. Are we okay? He asked carefully. A long beat. Then her voice warmed. Yeah, we're okay. Charlie smiled a tired but relieved smile. Good. Because I didn't like feeling like I disappointed you. Stella chuckled softly. You're forgiven. In that moment, they both realized something important. They could face tension without breaking. They could talk without shouting. They could disagree without falling apart. It wasn't just attraction. It was emotional maturity. Stella had felt tired for days. Not diner tired, not double shift tired, but a different kind of tired. A warm heaviness settled in her body, accompanied by a flutter of nerves she couldn't quite explain. After work one evening, she stood in her small bathroom, staring at a test sitting on the counter, a pregnancy test. Her heart raced so hard she could hear it in her ears. She paced. She stopped. She stared again. Finally, she picked it up. A soft gasp escaped her lips. Positive. Stella sat on the edge of the tub, both hands covering her mouth. The emotions rushed in all at once. Fear, joy, uncertainty, hope, excitement, responsibility. Love she didn't even know she had. She felt tears spring to her eyes, not from sadness, but from the sheer magnitude of the moment. I'm pregnant, she whispered to herself. A tiny smile curled on her lips. She texted him, Can you come over? I need to tell you something important. Charlie arrived in record time, practically running up the steps to her apartment. The moment he saw her standing in the living room, nervous, fidgeting with her fingers, he froze. Stella, what's wrong? Are you okay? She took a breath. I'm fine. I'm more than fine, actually. I just didn't know how to say this over the phone. He stepped closer, worry creasing his forehead. You can tell me anything. She looked him right in the eyes. Charlie, I'm pregnant. Everything went silent. Charlie blinked, once, twice. Then a slow, stunned smile broke across his face. His shoulders relaxed. His eyes softened. And then he exhaled a breath that sounded like relief, joy, and amazement wrapped together. Stella, We're having a baby? She nodded, eyes watery. Yeah. Charlie gently cupped her face, overwhelmed with emotion. This is incredible. You're not upset, she whispered. Upset? Charlie let out a short laugh, a surprised, happy one. Stella, this is the best news I've heard in years. Her lips trembled into a smile. He pulled her into his arms, holding her like she was something precious, because to him, she was. After the embrace, he lowered himself and placed a hand on her stomach with a reverence she had never seen in him before. Hi there, he murmured softly to the tiny life growing inside her. I'm your dad. Stella's breath caught. She had never imagined this moment, but the tenderness in Charlie's voice made her heart melt. The next few weeks, Charlie transformed in ways Stella hadn't anticipated. He bought parenting books. He researched prenatal vitamins. He added reminders on his phone for her checkups. He even asked her what foods made her nauseous so he could avoid bringing them around her. Every night, he called to check in. How are you feeling? Did you eat enough today? Do you need anything? But the most surreal part came one evening when Stella was lying on the couch, exhausted after a long shift. Charlie sat beside her, hesitating for only a moment. Can I read to the baby? Stella blinked, startled but touched. You want to read? He held up a children's book he brought with him. I figured, maybe it's not too early. Her heart swelled. He opened the book gently, rested his hand on her belly, and began reading in a soft, steady voice. The way he spoke, slowly, thoughtfully, made something inside Stella melt. She watched him, her eyes drifting over his face, seeing a version of him she never imagined, warm, loving, completely present. That night, hearing him read bedtime stories to their unborn child made Stella realize this man wasn't just excited. He was committed, and he already loved a baby he hadn't met yet. Stella waited until Sunday to tell her grandmother. She walked into the house, the air thick with the aroma of collard greens and cornbread. Before Stella could speak, her grandmother looked up, hands on her hips. What's that glow on your face? She asked. Stella smiled shyly. Grandma, I'm pregnant. Her grandmother froze, then screamed so loudly the entire block could have heard her. Lord have mercy. Somebody get me my good apron. We celebrating tonight. Stella burst into laughter as her grandmother started pulling pots, pans, spices, and family recipes from every drawer. You're making a feast? Stella asked through giggles. A feast? Her grandmother repeated. I'm making a declaration. My grandbaby is having a baby. She hugged Stella tightly, rocking her back and forth. You're going to be an amazing mother, her grandmother whispered. Stella closed her eyes, feeling warmth and comfort wash over her. And Charlie, her grandmother added with a sly grin, does he know he better step up? Stella chuckled. He's already stepping up. Her grandmother nodded proudly. Good, because this family welcomes anyone who treats us right. Dinner turned into a celebration. Laughter, music, the best recipes passed down through generations. Stella watched her grandmother dance around the kitchen, wiping tears and singing old hymns. It was the perfect start to something new. Later that night, after dropping Stella home, Charlie sat in his car for a full minute, letting everything sink in. He was going to be a father. A father. The word felt large, meaningful, grounding. He whispered it aloud. Dad. Then a small, almost shy smile lifted his lips. He wasn't scared. He wasn't overwhelmed. He was grateful. More grateful than he had ever been. Spring arrived in New York City like a gentle promise. Cherry blossoms blooming softly in Central Park, warm breezes slipping through open windows, sunlight stretching longer across the sidewalks. And in the midst of that new season, Stella found herself pacing her apartment, one hand pressed lightly to her belly. Charlie, she called from the bedroom, trying to stay calm. I think it's time. Charlie appeared in the doorway so fast he nearly tripped over his own shoes. Time. Her breath hitched again. Definitely time. He froze for 2 seconds, then scrambled to grab the hospital bag, the same one he triple-checked every night for a week straight. Stella watched, amused despite the contractions as he fumbled with his jacket. Charlie, slow down, she said, gripping the edge of the bed. I'm not delivering her in the hallway. Right. Yes, sorry, he said, breathless. We're good. I'm good. You're not good, she teased, wincing through another wave. But you're trying. He rushed to her side and helped her toward the door. Let's go meet our daughter. The delivery room was bright and calm, nurses moving with practiced confidence. Stella gripped Charlie's hand with a strength that made him gasp. "If I break your fingers," she said through gritted teeth, "you'll live." Charlie nodded vigorously. "Break whatever you need. I'm here." Hours passed. Stella fought exhaustion and pain, but she stayed focused, determined, grounded in strength that came from generations before her. Finally, the nurse spoke with a smile Stella would remember forever. "One more push, Stella. You've got this." Charlie squeezed her hand, his voice soft but steady. "I'm right here. You're doing amazing." With one last effort, Stella felt the world shift, and then the room filled with a tiny cry, delicate but powerful. Her baby. Their baby. The nurse lifted a small, warm, perfect little girl into Stella's arms. Stella stared down, tears instantly spilling. "Hi, sweetheart," she whispered shakily. "I'm your mom." Charlie leaned over them, his breath catching. "She's beautiful," he said in awe. The baby blinked up at him, her dark eyes curious and bright, as if trying to memorize the faces of the two people who already loved her more than anything. "What's her name?" a nurse asked gently. Stella and Charlie exchanged a look, the kind that held months of shared hope. "April," Stella said softly. "She's our spring blessing." Charlie kissed Stella's forehead and then the tiny crown of April's head. "Welcome to the world, April." The first nights were a blur of late feedings, soft lullabies, gentle rocking, and a strange combination of exhaustion and bliss. Stella slept with April on her chest, listening to her tiny breaths. Charlie stayed awake during every feeding, holding Stella's hand while April curled against her. One morning, Stella woke to find Charlie sitting beside the crib reading one of the same children's books he used to read to her belly. "You reading to her already?" Stella whispered. Charlie glanced up, his eyes warm. "She deserves the full story." Stella smiled, her heart full. April, just days old, already had a personality, or at least, she acted like she did. She smiled in her sleep. She waved her arms dramatically when hungry. She stared at everything as though the world was brand new and fascinating. "Well," Stella asked one afternoon, "do you think she looks more like you or me?" Charlie lifted April gently. "She has your eyes. And your stubborn chin," Stella teased. "Stubborn?" Charlie repeated. "It's called determination." Stella laughed. "I'll remember that when she throws her first tantrum." 2 weeks after April's birth, Charlie brought her to the office for a brief visit. He carried her carefully in a small carrier, adjusting the strap every 5 seconds, as if her comfort depended on perfect alignment. The front desk froze when Charlie stepped inside. "Good morning," the receptionist whispered. Is that—" "This is April," Charlie said, smiling proudly. The office melted. Executives who usually held serious expressions softened instantly. Advisors cooed. Randall, the CFO, approached cautiously, as if April were royal. "She's tiny," Randall said softly, eyes wide. "And mighty," Charlie added. When the elevator arrived, Charlie stepped inside with April snuggled close. A group of employees followed, whispering about how adorable she looked. Just before the doors closed, April did something unexpected. She waved. Her little hand lifted, fingers wiggling in an unmistakable greeting. Half the elevator gasped. One advisor shouted, She waved at us." Charlie looked down at his daughter, stunned. "April," he whispered, smiling, "you just created chaos in my elevator." April blinked once, then yawned dramatically. The entire elevator burst into laughter as the doors slid shut. That weekend, Stella brought April to church for the first time. Her grandmother insisted on carrying her into the sanctuary, holding her proudly like a priceless treasure. "Look at this beautiful baby," she declared, showing April to every member of the congregation. April stared at everyone with wide, curious eyes, and waved again. Miss Ramona nearly fainted. "She waving? Already? This child is advanced." The choir sang louder that day, as if celebrating a new little voice joining the family. Stella held April against her chest, feeling the warmth of generations welcoming her daughter with open arms. Charlie sat beside them, overwhelmed with gratitude to be included. One evening, Stella rocked April slowly in the dim light of their living room. Charlie was asleep on the couch, worn out from another night of midnight bottles and lullabies. Stella looked at her daughter, tiny fingers, soft cheeks, eyes that sparkled even while sleepy. "You changed everything," she whispered. And you don't even know it yet. April made a small sound, her lips forming a faint, sleepy smile. Stella felt emotion rise in her chest. Gratitude, love, something sacred. She pressed a kiss to April's forehead and held her close. Later that night, Charlie woke and found Stella asleep with April nestled against her. He sat beside them quietly, brushing a hand against April's back. Then he whispered something he had never said out loud. I'm going to give you both the life you deserve. It wasn't a grand announcement. It wasn't a dramatic vow. It was simple, soft, real. A promise from a man who finally understood what mattered most. Life with April quickly became a rhythm. A sweet, sometimes chaotic, always meaningful rhythm that stitched Charlie and Stella even closer together. Days moved gently, full of small miracles. April's first real giggle, her tendency to wave at strangers, her fascination with lights and music. And as their little family grew, so did the traditions forming around them. One Saturday morning, Charlie asked Stella to bring April to his house, but refused to tell her why. It's a surprise, he said with an innocent smile that somehow made Stella suspicious. Good surprise? She questioned. The best. She arrived an hour later, pushing April's stroller into the backyard, and froze. Charlie stood proudly beside a small wooden slide, freshly built, smooth edges, painted a soft pastel blue. At the bottom was a cushioned mat for safety. It wasn't large, but it was perfect for a growing baby. Stella gasped. Charlie, you built this? He brushed sawdust from his hands. I did. Took me 2 days and a lot of YouTube tutorials, and I may have yelled at a screw. Stella laughed. This is incredible. April wiggled with excitement from her stroller, making grabby hands toward the new structure. You like it? Charlie asked her softly. April kicked her feet in response. Charlie lifted her gently and placed her at the top, holding her securely. Ready, sweetheart? He helped her slide down slowly, supporting her the entire way. April squealed, a high-pitched, happy sound that made Stella's heart melt. Charlie beamed. I think she approves. Stella wrapped her arms around him in an impulsive hug. Thank you. This means so much. He hugged her back, resting his chin on her shoulder. Anything for you too. Every Sunday evening, Stella prepared a meal for their families, sometimes at her place, sometimes at Charlie's. It became a ritual, and April always sat in her high chair, watching every movement with eager curiosity. This Sunday, the table overflowed with cornbread, roasted chicken, vegetables, seasoned just right, and Stella's grandmother's famous peach cobbler. As everyone settled, Stella placed her hand softly on April's tiny one. Okay, April, she said gently. Time to learn our family tradition. Charlie watched, intrigued, and touched. Tradition? Stella nodded. Before we eat, we say grace. Even if it's short, even if it's simple, we take a moment. April stared up with wide eyes. Stella continued. We thank God for food, family, and another day together. April babbled something that vaguely resembled a response, and Stella laughed softly. Charlie leaned forward. Let me try. He took April's other little hand and whispered, Thank you for our beautiful daughter, and for Stella, who changed my life. Stella's eyes softened, her chest warming at the sincerity in his voice. April suddenly smacked the table and yelled, Hi! Everyone burst into laughter. Stella shook her head. Well, that's one way to end grace. Charlie grinned proudly. She's already participating. Central Park became their playground. April loved the fresh air, the open grass, the sounds of people and music floating through the trees. But most of all, she loved pigeons. The first time she saw one up close, she froze, then waved. The pigeon blinked at her. She waved harder. The pigeon hopped. April gasped. Then she giggled so loudly a jogger nearby slowed to smile at the scene. Charlie lifted April onto the grass. Go say hi. April toddled forward, not quite walking yet, but determined to get closer. The pigeon strutted away. April followed, squealing with delight. Stella covered her mouth, laughing. She thinks she's making a friend. She is, Charlie said. A friend who doesn't pay rent. They spent an entire hour watching April chase pigeons, or rather, watching pigeons expertly avoid her tiny, excited hands. Every time she stumbled, Charlie was there to catch her. Every time she giggled, Stella felt her heart stretch wider. At one point, Stella sat on a park bench, while Charlie held April high above his head, spinning her gently. April shrieked with joy, waving her arms. "She loves him," Stella murmured under her breath. And then, surprisingly, beautifully, she felt something inside her shift as she watched them together. She loved him too. Not because he helped her, not because he supported her, not because he stepped up. She loved him because of who he became around their daughter, softer, freer, full of quiet joy he didn't show to the world. That evening, they returned home tired but happy. Stella fed April her mashed vegetables while Charlie warmed her bath. Afterward, he wrapped her in a fluffy towel, gently brushing water from her tiny curls. Stella watched quietly from the doorway, smiling at the tender care Charlie gave their daughter. "You're good with her," Stella said. Charlie looked up, surprised by the softness of her voice. "I just love her." "I know," Stella replied. "She knows too." Later, they settled on the couch with April asleep between them. Her small breaths filled the room with peace. Charlie rested his head back. "I never thought life would feel like this." "Like what?" Stella asked. He looked at her, really looked at her. "Full," he said simply. Stella felt the weight of that word, the truth of it resting deep in her chest. She slipped her hand beneath April's blanket and gently touched Charlie's fingers. He intertwined them without hesitation. It wasn't a confession. It wasn't a promise. It was a moment that said more than words could. And if you've enjoyed watching this family grow, drop a comment below and tell us your favorite moment so far. It helps the channel grow, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. The soft glow of early morning slipped through the curtains of Charlie's living room, casting a gentle warmth across the floor where April toddled between her toys. Stella sat on the couch sipping tea, still waking up from a long night of soothing April back to sleep. Charlie entered quietly, hair tousled, eyes still tired, but smiling. Because mornings like this, he learned, were the best part of his life. He sat next to Stella, letting his shoulder touch hers. April squealed from the rug, wobbling proudly as she stood on her own for 3 whole seconds before plopping back down. Stella laughed softly. "She gets that determination from you." Charlie shook his head. "No, she gets her joy from you." Stella felt her cheeks warm. Even after months of growing closer, even after April's arrival, his compliments still hit her heart gently, like a soft melody. Charlie watched April with a thoughtful expression. "Do you know something?" he said quietly. "Before you came into my life, I thought success was measured by numbers, charts, profit, expansion." Stella rested her tea on the table. "And now," Charlie exhaled, voice deep with truth, "now I measure it by mornings like this, by our daughter's laughter, by you sitting next to me." Stella's eyes softened. She had seen Charlie grow, not in status, not in wealth, but in heart. He had traded endless stress for something steadier, something richer. "Charlie," she whispered, "you changed too, you know. Not just your priorities. Your spirit changed." He turned to her, listening fully. "When we first met," she continued, "you carried so much weight alone. You never slowed down long enough to breathe. Now, you laugh more. You sit still. You let life in." Charlie swallowed, emotion shifting in his eyes. "You gave me space to become that man." She shook her head gently. "You did it yourself. I just reminded you what peace feels like." April let out a loud "dah" and slapped her palms on the floor. Charlie and Stella laughed. "She's trying to talk," Stella whispered proudly. Charlie lifted April carefully, placing her on his lap. "Say, Mama," he coaxed. April looked at Stella, grinned mischievously, and shouted, "Dah!" Stella groaned. "Unfair. I carried her for 9 months." Charlie held April up triumphantly. "Victory." April giggled and shoved her tiny hand into his face. Stella rolled her eyes but smiled. Watching them together reminded her daily of the quiet miracle her life had become. Later that afternoon, Stella prepared a simple lunch while Charlie held April against his chest, swaying gently. When Stella glanced over, she paused. The sight always caught her heart. Charlie whispered to their daughter, "One day you'll walk on your own, and I'll still be right behind you." Stella leaned on the counter, smiling softly. "You're getting poetic." Charlie shrugged as if embarrassed. "She brings it out of me." Stella walked over, resting her hand lightly on his arm. "You bring it out of yourself. You just never had a reason before." Charlie looked at her, deeply, searchingly, and whispered, "You were the reason long before she was born." Stella inhaled, her heart tightening with emotion. She didn't rush the moment. She let it sit between them, warm, sincere, full. "I'm glad our lives crossed," she said finally. "Me too," he replied. Over the next few weeks, April began learning new sounds, waving more often, saying hi to anything that moved: the mailman, the blender, the cat outside, reflections in the window. One afternoon, April pointed at Charlie's tie and proudly announced, "Tie!" Stella burst out laughing. She learned the most important word for your career. Charlie looked horrified. Why couldn't her first big word be something meaningful, like love, or mom, or even book? April poked his cheek and repeated, "Tie!" Stella doubled over. Face it, she's on brand. But then, the next morning, while Stella buckled her into a stroller, April looked up and whispered, "Mama." Stella froze. Charlie turned, stunned. "Did she?" "Mama," April repeated, reaching her little hands toward Stella. Stella's heart overflowed. She lifted April into her arms, hugging her tight. "That's me," she whispered tearfully. "I'm your mama." Charlie watched them, chest full, feeling something sacred anchor itself inside him. That evening, after April fell asleep, Stella and Charlie sat together in the quiet living room. No TV, no music, just them. Charlie reached for her hand. "Can I tell you something?" "Of course." He exhaled. "I used to think I needed to prove myself constantly, that if I slowed down, I'd fall behind. But now, slowing down feels like the smartest thing I've ever done." Stella moved closer until their knees touched. "You found meaning?" Charlie nodded. "I did. And that meaning is you and April." Stella's eyes shimmered, her voice soft. "And you helped me find mine, too. Before you, I felt stuck, like my dreams were sitting on a shelf collecting dust." "You deserve every dream you have," Charlie said. "You deserve to grow." She squeezed his hand. "I'm growing because life finally feels possible." Charlie leaned his forehead to hers. Not a kiss, not rushed affection, just an intimate closeness filled with trust. "We're building something real," he murmured. "We are," she whispered back. And they sat there, hands intertwined, baby asleep in the next room, future wide open. The morning began peacefully, sunlight drifting through the windows, April humming her usual baby songs from her high chair while Stella diced strawberries for breakfast. Charlie had already left for a meeting downtown, but he'd kissed April, his forehead, then Stella's cheek, before walking out the door. Life felt steady, balanced, hopeful. Stella wiped her hands on a towel and checked her phone. 3 new notifications. She opened the first one, a message from the local community foundation she'd once applied to for a scholarship. Her brows furrowed. "Congratulations, Miss Stella. You have been awarded a full sponsorship for your accounting program starting this fall." Stella blinked. Her heart skipped once. Then again, this didn't make sense. She hadn't reapplied. She hadn't even updated her email interest list. And when she applied 3 years ago, she'd been rejected for lack of slots. She scrolled. A second email appeared, this one from the program administrator. "We are excited to confirm your approved funding. Your tuition has already been taken care of by a private donor who wished to remain anonymous." Her breath caught. Anonymous donor. Her mind flashed to one person instantly, but she pushed the thought aside. Charlie wouldn't do that. Not quietly, not secretly, not without telling her. "Mama." April cheered with a strawberry in each hand. Stella forced a smile, lifting her daughter. "Mama's okay, sweetheart. Just surprised." But the unease sat in her chest. She opened the last notification. This one was a receipt from the institution showing her registration fee had already been paid. Her hands trembled slightly. Someone had gone out of their way, in a big way, to open a door she thought had closed forever. There was only one person she trusted enough to even consider as the source. But Charlie hadn't said a word. Not last night, not this morning, not ever. Stella took a slow breath. She needed to hear it from him. Later that day, Stella buckled April into her stroller and took the subway into Manhattan. The ride felt longer than usual. Her thoughts shifted between gratitude and confusion. When she stepped into the lobby of Charlie's headquarters, the reception team greeted her warmly. "Hi, Stella." "Hi, April." "She's getting so big. She waved at me last time. Will she wave again?" April obliged with a happy, messy wave, but Stella's mind stayed focused. When she reached Charlie's office, his assistant smiled. He just finished a meeting. You can go in. Stella pushed the stroller forward and knocked gently. Come in, Charlie called. He turned, and his whole face lit up. My girls, what a surprise. Stella tried to smile, but her expression stayed steady, calm, serious. Charlie noticed instantly. Is everything okay? Stella inhaled. I got an email today. Charlie blinked. From the accounting program, she said softly. They said my tuition is paid. By a private donor. Charlie's eyes shifted, not with guilt, but with the look of someone caught caring too deeply. Stella stepped closer. Charlie, was it you? He exhaled slowly, rubbing the back of his neck. I didn't want you to feel pressured, or like you owed me anything. Why didn't you tell me? Because I wanted your dream to feel like your own, he said. His voice didn't wobble. It was steady, honest. You talked about accounting every time your confidence slipped. You looked out the window like you were imagining a life you almost forgot you could have. Stella swallowed gently. I wanted you to have that life, Charlie continued, stepping closer. Not because of me, but because you deserve it. Her eyes filled, not with tears of hurt, but with deep, overwhelming emotion. Charlie, she whispered, you didn't need to do that. I know, he said, but I wanted to. April babbled something that sounded like approval. Stella let out a shaky breath. I'm not upset. I just wish you'd told me. I don't want secrets between us, not even good ones. Charlie nodded instantly. You're right. I should have told you. I just didn't want to take your freedom away by making the decision for you. You didn't take my freedom, Stella said gently. You gave it back. Charlie's shoulders relaxed, relief washing through him. And I want to do this, she continued, truly. But I don't want it to be something you handle alone. He stepped closer and took her hands. Then we'll do it together. Every step. Charlie cleared the afternoon schedule so they could sit together, Stella, Charlie and April, in his office reviewing the program details. April sat on Charlie's lap, tapping at his tie like it was a piano. Stella laughed softly. She's obsessed with those ties. She's obsessed with ruining them, Charlie replied with a grin. Between laughter and paperwork, Stella felt something she hadn't felt since college hope. Direction, momentum. Her dream wasn't dusty anymore. It wasn't postponed. It wasn't unreachable. Charlie watched her light up as she reviewed the curriculum. You're going to be amazing, he said. Stella tilted her head. You really believe that? With my entire heart, he answered. She placed her hand over his. Then I believe it too. As they walked out into the late afternoon sun, pushing April's stroller, down the busy Manhattan sidewalk, Stella looked up at Charlie. Why did you do it? She asked again, gently this time. Not challenging, just wanting the truth behind the truth. Charlie stopped, turning to face her completely. When I met you, he said, I was drowning in numbers, in noise, in pressure. You saw something in a spreadsheet that saved my life, but long before that you saw me. You talked to me like I mattered, not because of my name, not my position. Stella listened, silence full and warm. You saved my company, he continued, but you also saved me from the version of myself that didn't know how to breathe. Stella blinked, touched deeply. So if I can help you step into a dream you put on hold, he said softly. Why wouldn't I? Stella reached for his hand, and he squeezed hers gently. This wasn't charity, this wasn't pity, this wasn't imbalance. It was love, quiet, steady, powerful love. Love that lifted instead of replaced. Love that honored instead of overshadowed. Stella whispered, Thank you, Charlie, for believing in me before I remembered how to believe in myself. He pulled her close with one arm while pushing April with the other. Always. And for the first time, Stella felt the future open fully, clear, bright, possible. Spring settled over New York City the same way it always did, gently, almost shyly at first, then all at once. The air softened, the breeze warmed, and the cherry blossoms in Central Park began to open like tiny pink promises. For Stella, those blossoms always meant renewal. For Charlie, they meant gratitude. And for little April, they meant an entire new world to point at with excitement. On this particular Saturday morning, Stella buttoned April's light jacket while the toddler bounced impatiently on her toes. Slow down, Mama's almost done, Stella laughed. April responded with a cheerful hi, directed at absolutely nothing, which made Charlie smile from across the room. She's greeting the season, he said, slipping his hand onto Stella's waist as he kissed the top of April's curls. Or greeting her destiny, Stella teased. She acts like she owns the park. She does, Charlie replied. I've accepted my place. Stella rolled her eyes affectionately. Let's go, before she says hi to the couch again. The walk to the park felt peaceful. The kind of peace that doesn't demand attention. The kind that settles into a person and makes a home there. Charlie pushed April's stroller while Stella walked beside him, their hands, brushing every few steps until Stella finally intertwined their fingers. When they reached the cherry blossom path, April squealed with a sound so joyful that a few nearby joggers paused just to smile. Look at her, Charlie whispered. She's never going to forget this. Stella lifted April out of the stroller, holding her close while petals drifted down like soft confetti. April reached out a tiny hand, catching a petal between her fingers before losing it to the breeze. She gasped like she just performed magic. She thinks she made that happen, Stella murmured. Honestly, Charlie said, I think she did. Stella laughed, leaning into him. And for a moment they simply stood still, watching their daughter, watching the blossoms, watching the life they never expected grow richer with every ordinary day. They found a bench under a full-bloom tree. April toddled around in front of them, taking wobbly steps between the sunlight patches on the grass. Charlie's voice softened. Do you ever think about how close I came to losing all of this? Stella turned to him. You mean the business? No, he said immediately. This, you, April, our family. Her heart tugged. Charlie, she whispered, but he continued. I still remember that day, standing in the boardroom thinking everything was over. I thought I was about to sign away everything I'd ever built. Stella brushed her fingers over the back of his hand. That email changed more than the company, he said. It changed me. That wasn't just the email, Stella replied. It was you choosing to listen, you choosing to trust. Charlie met her eyes, warm and steady. And then you chose to stay in my life. Stella felt a swell of emotion she didn't rush to speak over. Instead, she leaned her head on his shoulder, letting the truth of his words rest between them like sunlight. Funny how one small correction, she said quietly, shifted everything. Charlie chuckled softly. A single digit, and a single moment of honesty, she added, and a brilliant woman who didn't look away. Stella swatted his arm gently. Don't make me cry in public. You're allowed, he said. It's our day. Just then, April toddled toward a group of pigeons, spreading her arms wide as if she expected them to hug her. The birds scattered immediately, and April burst into delighted giggles. That child is fearless, Stella said proudly. Or determined, Charlie agreed. She gets that from you. Stella nudged him. Please. She gets the stubbornness from you. April stumbled forward, and Charlie was up on his feet instantly, guiding her balance with gentle hands. April looked up at him and said a triumphant, Hi! Stella laughed so hard, her shoulders shook. She greets danger like it's a friend. She'll be unstoppable, Charlie said, lifting April into his arms as she squealed and pressed her face against his cheek. The sight made Stella's chest tighten, in that warm way, the kind that makes a person feel grateful for every choice, every step, every twist that led them here. When April finally settled back into her stroller with her stuffed bear, Stella and Charlie sat together again, watching the wind move through the branches overhead. Stella spoke first. You know, when I found your laptop that night, I almost didn't open the spreadsheet. Charlie's brows raised slightly. Why didn't you tell me that before? Because it sounded silly, she admitted. I wasn't sure if I'd be crossing a line. I didn't want to interfere. I kept wondering if I should have just ignored it. I'm glad you didn't, he said, lifting her hand to his lips. I guess part of me hoped that helping someone might matter, Stella continued, but I never imagined it would lead to all of this. Charlie ran his thumb across her palm. It mattered more than you'll ever know. You helped me save the company, but you helped me save myself too. Her eyes softened. Charlie, I mean it, he said. Before you, I lived in numbers, in deadlines, in pressure. I didn't know what it felt like to actually breathe. Then you walked into my life during a rainstorm holding a coffee pot and asking if my spreadsheets were okay. Stella covered her face, laughing. Why do you say it like that? You make me sound like a superhero with a side apron. You are, Charlie said firmly. To me, to April, to this entire journey. Stella lowered her hands, emotion welling again, the kind she didn't need to hide. He took a breath, then spoke the words that would anchor the entire ending. The error that almost ruined everything became the blessing that gave us everything. Stella couldn't speak for a moment. She simply leaned into him, absorbing the truth of it. Because it was real. Because it was theirs. Because fate had stitched their lives together in the most unlikely way. Charlie placed his arm around Stella as April hummed in her stroller, finally drifting toward sleep. Stella murmured playfully, nudging him. Say it. Charlie looked at her, then smiled at the imaginary camera of storytelling, the one your audience listens for. Family, he said softly, can come from the most unexpected places. Stella nodded. And sometimes, the moment everything goes wrong is the moment your life finally goes right. The cherry blossoms drifted down around them like a quiet celebration of their journey. The beginning. The struggle, the growth, the love they never planned for, but now couldn't imagine living without. If this story touched your heart even a little, please like this video, comment your favorite moment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to Stories by Mr. Flex for more life-changing stories.